side?
Benyas side, the only one I really knew was Uncle Morris, because he was one of the optometrists.
Mm-hmm.
But there was Uncle Aaron. See, they were younger. So they probably were in school. Aaron went to law school, could not get a job, couldn't make $1 as a lawyer. And his brother Morris sent him to optometry school. He became an optometrist. There was also, my dad had a sister Pearl who was married to Murray Jackman. He was an optometrist.
And wasn't Mort an optometrist?
And Mort was a baby. He was an optometrist too. But he was 10 years younger than I am.
10 years older.
10 years older. So he was born in 13, I was born in 23.
Right.
Yeah, 10 years older.
Morris was the oldest brother, right?
Right, and
Pearl?
the women, Pearl was married to Murray Jackman.
Mm-hmm.
Hannah lived in Chicago, and she was married, I can't remember his name, she had 2 husbands. He passed away, I can't remember their name. And then there was Ida, who was my dad's youngest sister, and she was married to a man in the Merchant Marine, and he was a captain in the Merchant Marine. And they lived in some other city. I don't know. I didn't know her. She died young. She died of breast cancer in her 40s.
Did he go off to the service?
Yeah, and then he went off to service.
And
he lived through the war.
Somebody died in a submarine.
Right. He had 2 boys and a girl. The girl is Darlene, and one son,
Seymour.
Seymour, I think was his name, was lost in a submarine during the war. And he had another son who I don't know if I ever saw him. They lived out of town. He lived through the war and lived someplace else.
Seymour's last name was
Rice.
So that was
Rice.
Ida's son.
Ida's son, right?
Okay. So of the aunts and uncles that you typically saw, Uncle Morris
And Mildred.
Aunt Mildred.
Who was a music teacher in Detroit. So
Mildred was married to
Morris.
Morris.
Oh, okay.
And
Aaron.
well, no, they were younger. No, I saw Aunt Pearl, who was married to Murray Jackman. We'd go there for dinner sometime.
What did Murray Jackman do?
He was an optometrist, and he had 2 sons. One became a doctor, and one guy, I don't know, Sherwood, and one.
Out in California, right?
They moved to California, yeah, during the war, I think.
Okay.
During the war, they made a lot of money. He made a lot of money because he bought up real estate. During the Depression, he made money as an optometrist. Somehow or other, he made money when nobody else did. And he had a lot of stock. And a week before the crash, he sold absolutely everything to cash and put it in a vault. He didn't put it in the bank because the banks were closed. So he was the only one that had any money.
Wow.
And he had a lot. Apparently he had a lot.
Wow.
Because after the war, he started buying property in Detroit.
Property was real cheap, right?
Property was cheap. Bought up Woodward Avenue. A lot of places on Woodward Avenue. I don't know a lot about it, but just a little bit I know. And then he sold everything, moved to California for a fortune.
Wow.
And they lived out there, and we never really heard from them again.
Yeah.
The only time I remember hearing is when Aunt Pearl died. We got a call that she had passed away.
Yeah.
I think my dad went out there for the funeral, and it was they had even converted. They weren't Jewish anymore. They were Episcopalians, so it wasn't even a Jewish funeral. My dad was very upset.
Really?
Yeah.
This was Murray Jackman's wife. Pearl.
He lived there in his 90s.
She came here once. Pearl came
She
here once.
came here once.
I don't remember for
We
what.
saw her.
All right, so moving
The
back
other
to
uncles I didn't really know. The Webbers, we were close. We did everything together with the Webbers. I mean,
Right.
the family dinners on Friday night.
with the aunts and uncles.
Aunts and uncles at my grandma's house, and then she died in an automobile accident. You know, both my grandmas were killed in automobile accidents.
Oh,
both of my grandmas.
Edward Weber's wife.
What was
her
killed.
name?
She was 33 years old.
Wasn't she gay?
Etta.
Etta.
She was only 33. And Grandma Benyas was killed in 1919
In Petoskey.
in Petoskey, and I don't think she was much older than that, because my dad was very young.
Your sister Etta Gale was named for her grandmother Etta.
Yeah.
And
Right.
what was the Gale from?
We just added it because we thought it would be nice.
I see.
You know, I don't know who I'm named after. I'm Robert Allen. I don't know who I'm
But
named after.
Yitzchak.
Well, Yitzchak was named probably after a great-grandparent who I didn't know.
So, growing up in the Depression, times were tough, saving every penny. and eventually you go on to Wayne, and had to borrow some money from a couple uncles to pay for semester. When you were only at Wayne, it was that time it was called Wayne University, right?
Wayne
Wayne
University.
University?
And
Was
you
it
only
Wayne
you were
State?
there less than 1 year.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
had- so
Less
you
than
started in the fall,
Right.
drafted in March,
Right,
and you go off to Camp Custer.
right.
By the way, before I ask you about that, the Pearl Harbor, the news of Pearl Harbor was a shock to everybody, right? And you knew America was at war at that time.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Well, the president came on.
President came on.
Will you remember the president's speech?
Definitely remember the president's speech, daily to live in infamy. And then we had rationing. That happened pretty quick. We had ration cards. You could only have so much meat, so much sugar, so much gasoline, and people that worked there was some black market going on because they needed gasoline. Not so much for food, but I think even now. Did your father say anything about getting flour or sugar to make bread? Did he ever
No,
talk about that?
no.
He never talked about it.
No.
Lord knows where they got the sugar. There was a shortage of sugar because the sugar came from sugar cane, came from the islands of South America. Maybe there was a big
I don't know how much sugar was used in bread, and I don't know how much cakes were made.
Yeah, flour we had in America. I don't know if flour was rationed, but I don't know that sugar was rationed,
was
gasoline, and meat.
Mm-hmm.
And you could only have so much. I think you could only have so many eggs.
I still have some ration cards.
Yeah. Times were tough, but we were young, and everybody seemed to get along. I mean, I think the times are better than they are now because nobody was fearful. We were not fearful. The only people that were worried are people who had sons that already had gone overseas. Maybe people who had volunteered in 39 or 40.
To go fight with the British.
Yeah, well, they were in the army. They didn't necessarily fight, but they were in the army. As a matter of fact, I lost a cousin on the Aleutian Islands. On the Weber side, there was a cousin. His name was Charlie Greenbaum, and he volunteered, probably 38 or 39. Was sent to the Aleutians, and what I heard is that he died of pneumonia. That he got where it was cold.
But during the war, we had blackouts here.
We had
blackout curtains,
Mhm.
and I remember when planes were flying by.
You were scared.
I was terrified.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you were young, so it didn't sink in, and you didn't know anybody. And even when I was in the service, and I even went overseas, I knew guys were getting killed, but it didn't mean anything. And then I lost my best friend.
Who was that?
His name was Alan Cantor. He was my best friend in high school.
From Central or Northwest?
From Central, but we kept up our friendship after.
You knew where he was
And
in
then
the service?
he became a pilot.
Hmm.
Yeah, well, all I knew was that he became a pilot. We wrote, and then I didn't get any more letters. And I wrote my mother, and I said, I'm not getting any letters from Alan, and she didn't want to tell me that he was lost. The plane went down somewhere, and then he was just lost.
Where was he? Where was he a pilot? Do you
I have
remember?
no idea. In the States. He was in the States. So whether he went out in the Atlantic Ocean or into the ground, I never found out.
Well, I mean, he was kind of training in the States.
Probably training, but not
How do you spell Cantor? K-A-N-T-O-R?
C.
C-A-N-T-O-R.
Yeah.
So, you're at Camp Custer, and you're going through basic training.
Right. And I have a fraternity brother at Camp Custer assigning guys to places. One of my fraternity brothers, older guy, he had already graduated from Wayne, but he was a Pi Tau like I was.
Pi Tau Sigma?
Pi Tau Sigma at Wayne. And he said, Ben, I know that name. You go to Wayne? I said, yeah, I go to Wayne. You're Pi Tau? Yeah, I'm a Pi Tau. He says, don't worry, I'm sending you to the Air Corps. I went to the Air Corps. A lot of guys went to the infantry.
Jeez.
They sent me to the Air Corps, and I went to a basic training at an Air Corps field in Texas called Shepherd Field, and that's a good story, because I met a guy on the train. Just happened to meet him. His name was Jim Alta, and he was 34 years old. And at 35, you wouldn't be drafted. So when we get to basic training, they assigned they unload this whole train of guys. I don't know how many were on there, maybe 1,000. And they assign everybody to a barracks, Z to A. And they leave 2 guys out, Benyas and Alta. We don't have a place to sleep. So they got to find us a place. So they put us in a barracks where there were 2 beds. On the upper floor where we went were all guys from Brooklyn, and the bottom floor were all guys from Texas, and we could not speak the language. We couldn't talk to Brooklyn, we couldn't talk to Texas. Because everything was shit or fuck. Every other word. So anyway, we gotta go through basic training. And Jim is now like 34 and a half. And I'm a track star, right?
Right.
So I did all his calisthenics, and I signed him in. I signed Bob Benyas and I signed Jim Alta, and nobody caught us. And I did he would go out there and maybe do a little bit, but I had to climb ropes, I had to jump over stuff, I had to go under machine gun nests, and I did it for him. So we take aptitude tests to find out what kind of training we're going to get. See, so we both pass airplane mechanic. And Jim goes to commanding officer and he says, please don't send me to airplane mechanics. He says, I'm a photographer. I've been a photographer for 20 years. I worked at Detroit Edison since high school, and I'm a photographer. Send me to photo school. He said, no, photo school is closed. He says, well, you don't want me to be an airplane mechanic because you don't want me fixing those airplanes. I don't know what a screwdriver is. He says, you're going to photo school. And he says, well, take my buddy Benyas because he's a photographer too. And I went to photo school in Lowry Field. That's how I got to photo school.
That's amazing.
Otherwise, I would have been airplane mechanic or, you know, maybe an infantryman, because they were taking guys out.
Yeah.
They needed infantry. They didn't need airplane mechanics anymore.
This was at all at Shepherd Air Force Base.
In Texas, which was terribly hot. It was in the summer now.
Right.
This was summer. And
Where in Texas is it? San Antonio?
No, it's near Lubbock. It's I think it's like northwest. I think.
In the Panhandle somewhere.
Somewhere in the Panhandle. Yeah.
But it's got to be brutal. July and
August. It was terrible. Then we go to Denver, which is mile high.
Right. And
we can't breathe. It took me about a week to. I'm huffing and puffing, just walking.
What was that field called?
That was Lowry Field.
Lowry Field in Denver. Okay.
And that was a school. It was basically a school, but you did some marching. You didn't do a lot of training, but you marched every day. You had roll call at 6 o'clock in the morning. You had breakfast, and they would march you. You learned to march with a rifle. And
where was the incident where you didn't want to stab with the bayonet?
That was in basic training.
At Shepherd?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, that's an interesting story because I had never fired a rifle, or I never hurt anybody. You know, I was a sweet, loving, peaceful guy. So I went to the rifle range, and I kind of liked that. That was kind of neat, and I could shoot. I got a marksmanship medal. I'm still there. Yeah, I got a marksmanship medal because I could hit the target even with my eyes, and that was okay. And then they said, okay, now we're going to teach you how to put the bayonet on, and you're going to charge up a hill, and you're going to stab this straw bag with a face on it. And I said, I'm not going to do that. I said, I'm not going to stick a bayonet in anybody. I'm not going to hurt anybody, but you have to do it. I said, no, I'm not going to do it. So the sergeant said, well, you have to do it. It's an order, and you have to do it, or you'll be shot. I'm not going to do it. She says, well, okay, you're assigned to your barracks. So somebody went and got the chaplain. The chaplain comes and he said, they can shoot you. Your family will hear that you're a traitor. You didn't do what they told you to do. You have to do it. That's what the chaplain said. By this time, I'm not listening to any chaplain. I'm mad. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
So a sergeant came to me at night. He woke me up at night. And he said, Benyas, come on, you don't have to do that, but you're going to pass. He said, just come with me. So he took me up to that place. This is the middle of the night. And he says, you know how to put the bayonet on, don't you? Yeah, I know how to put the bayonet on. I'm not sticking it in. He says, I don't want you to stick it in. All you want you to do is hold it in front of the bag. And I'm going to pass you. He said, yeah. I said, okay. I'm dumb. Yeah. I hold the bayonet in front, and he pushed me. So the bayonet went in about an inch or so. He says, you pass. So that saved my life.
Jeez.
So if it wasn't for that guy, I don't know what would have happened. I don't know whether they let me go or whether they made it. The probably could have court-martialed me. I don't know if they would have shot me.
No, yeah.
No, I don't think they would, but anyway.
They want to make you fearful.
Yeah, well, there was a nice. So some of the sergeants were really nasty, and but no, I passed. So then I went on to Lowry Field, and that was the end of that incident.
So you remember what time?
I didn't tell you about all the women I had at all the fields either. Every field, man, did I have women. There were dances. There were like 500 guys and 2 girls.
So was basic training, was it pretty grueling for you, or did you kind of enjoy it?
No, I liked it.
You liked all the athletics?
As a matter of fact, I wanted to be a PT instructor. I applied for PT instructor. I thought it was great.
You like doing all that?
Because I had just finished, you know. Here I am,
Track
what, 20 years old, and,
yeah.
and I finished track, and I was apparently in good shape. And
Yeah.
no, I thought that was better than fighting. I thought if I could stay on the base.
Right. How about the food? How was the food?
I ate the food. It was okay. It wasn't.
Did you meet any guys? You make friends with any guys other than this Alta?
Not there. I did a photo school.
So tell me about the photo school, Lowry Field.
I was there, I think, 3 months.
This had been 40,
by
fall
that-
of 42?
Yeah, 42
Or 40, 43?
43.
Well, probably 43. Probably by 43. Yeah. No, I went in I was only in almost 3 years.
So you went in, you got drafted in
I got
43.
my papers upstairs. Yeah. I wasn't in quite 3 years. For 3 years you get a hash mark on your uniform, and I wanted that, but they discharged me after the war. Anyway,
Okay.
Lowry Field was 3 months, and I was already a pretty good photographer. Apparently I had innate ability to take pictures, but I didn't know anything about photography. I didn't know anything about film or chemistry, but I knew how to do it. So I learned. I had classes in chemistry, and I had photochemistry, and I improved my technique, and I learned about different cameras. I learned about a lot of stuff. Learned about aerial cameras, which I had no idea existed. And then when I graduated from there, I went home on a furlough. Was home for like 2 weeks, and then I went to Richmond Army Air Base, and there I had a big love affair.
Richmond, Virginia?
Richmond, Virginia.
Yeah, big love affair.
I was there also about 3 months. Yeah, I forget her name. It was pretty nice. Because I had a girlfriend back home, but she was already fooling around, and so I figured I'd fool around.
Who was your girlfriend?
Joan Goldstein.
From Central or Northwest?
Who was a classmate of mine.
She was a classmate of Shirley's.
You went to Central.
But we went on some simple dates.
Yeah.
You know, kids did. You went to Friday night parties. We didn't go out because there was no money.
Yeah.
But she was my girlfriend. I don't think she dated anybody else while we were dating. But then after the war, well, she went to U of M. I met she met a guy she eventually married at U of M.
So wait a minute. Go back. Lowry Field. You went from Lowry Field to Richmond, Virginia.
Yeah, went home for furlough. Then I went to Richmond, Virginia. I was there probably about 3 months, and I was a photographer on Richmond Army Air Base, and I photographed a lot of things there. And I learned to use different cameras, and that was pretty nice. And I was promoted to corporal. When I finished photo school, I made a private first class. When I got to Richmond after a few months, I was made a corporal, and as a private, I made $21. Corporal, I'm not sure, I forget, but I think I made like 40, and sergeant, I made about 60.
When did you get promoted to sergeant? When you were overseas?
Overseas.
So, from Richmond, didn't you sail from Norfolk, Virginia?
Well, yeah. Then after Richmond, they sent me home again for about a week, and then I went to Newport News, Virginia, to wait embarkation. It's called. And I left.
This would have been around approximately. Do you remember?
This was before D-Day. D-Day was 44.
June 44.
Okay, this was. I must have gone in 43 because this was 44.
Yeah.
And it was like June 5th, 44, that I left on the SS Randall, and my family knew that I was able to tell them I was going from the Atlantic coast, and then they hear about D-Day, and they didn't hear from me for 3 months.
Because you're overseas.
I wrote letters, but they were on the ship. I was on a ship. I went through the Panama Canal. I went through North and South Island of New Zealand. I went around to Australia,
Perth.
Perth, Australia, and I was there about a week while they refueled, and it was amazing. The Randall had 5,000 troops, and then it had sailors and Marines, and I was on that boat for 3 months.
Did you know you were going to CBI at that?
I had no idea. Never heard of CBI. They didn't tell me anything. Didn't tell me anything about any enemies. I don't think we knew about D-Day. We knew very, very little.
You didn't know whether you were going to the European theater or fight the Germans?
Where do you go for 3 months? Where is there for 3 months? No, I think we knew we went to the Panama Canal because we could see it. We were allowed to go up topside, and we knew this is the Panama Canal, so we knew we were in the Pacific. I thought maybe I'm going to Hawaii, for Pearl Harbor.
You just didn't.
I had no idea.
Life on those troop ships was not all that good.
It was terrible, and I was 5 holes down in a bunk that was 2 feet by 2 feet by 6 feet, and you had to have your pack and your It gave me an overcoat before I left, and a rifle, and all that had to be with you in this little space that you slept. But what I did was I volunteered for KP. KP is supposed to be a punishment. But I guess one day when I was, and the food was served all day long, 5,000 troops. So they would serve a kind of a breakfast, and then they served an afternoon meal, and you went twice to be fed. And I must have talked to somebody or something, and he said, well, why don't you come in the kitchen, give you something, So I went in there and I peeled potatoes. There was a potato peeling machine. It was kind of a centrifuge that was rough inside, and you poured a bag of potatoes in there, hit a button, and it would spin around, and then you take the potatoes out, they'd be peeled, and they would do something with them. And that's what I did. Meantime, I ate in the kitchen. I ate steaks, I ate fresh vegetables and fruits. Amazing what they had on that ship. It was a passenger ship that they had converted. Some guys were on the old Queen Mary, which was really a luxurious troop ship. Yeah. But I was on the Randall. I remember that. I don't remember the name of the ship I came back on.
What were guys doing on the troop
Gambling.
ship?
Everybody gambled. Played cards.
Did you do
played
that?
Cards and dice. No, I wasn't really into that. I wasn't much of a card player. I watched a little bit.
Did you do it?
And there were some guys that were sharks. They knew how to take the guy's money. And we always felt at the end of the 3 months there were probably 10 guys that had all the money on the ship. Yeah. No, I didn't have a camera. I didn't take any pictures, but I wrote letters every day. And then when I got to India, I was able to mail them
to your mother and father.
My mother and father. They kept them. Then there was a fire in their garage. Everything, my uniform, everything was burned up. Oh, jeez. Yeah, I had a whole box of stuff, of things I had collected, and my uniform, and all my letters. You still
have some medals and something, don't you?
Well, I had a good conduct medal, I had a sharpsmanship medal, and I had an overseas medal. That was all. I didn't see any combat.
What was there a outfit that you were affiliated with?
Well, it was 10th Air Force CBI, China, Burma, India, and I landed in Bombay.
Before we get to Bombay, didn't you have an experience in Australia with a bird?
No. That's India.
That's in India. Okay. What'd you do in that week in Perth?
Well, I was only on shore a day. They had a USO. I went to a USO. I got donuts. There were girls there from Australia, and I think we might have danced, had coffee, looked around. You weren't allowed to take the girls out. It was just a day, and then I had to go back to the ship, and then they let some more guys out.
Yeah. At that point, did you know where you were going when you got to Australia?
No. When we finally left Australia, they said we're headed for India. I didn't know where India was. And we went all the way around India to the west side and landed in Bombay. And there I was at a British barracks, which was absolutely terrible, for about a week. And then I was put on a train to Karachi, where there was a base. And that's when I had the incident with a bird. They would stop the train, and chefs, or they were called mess officers, would get off the train, and they would have things to heat, like a barbecue, kind of a charcoal fire, and they would make different foods, mainly soup. And we ate a lot of packaged foods. There were C rations, K rations. They were packaged foods, and that's what you ate. But and we had a mess kit, which was a metal thing. It had a cup and a handle with it, a little pan and a dish and knife and fork, all metal, that came together and collapsed and it fit in a little in a cloth case. And one day I was off the train and I had food, and a vulture came and took the food right off the plate, and the wings are like 6 or 8 feet wide, and smacked me in the face, knocked me over, and just scared the living hell out of me. I mean, I was afraid of birds for a long time. I mean, the wings, really.
Wow.
Actually, I was sitting on something, I forget what, maybe some kind of a backpack, and knocked me over and frightened me. What is that? I didn't know. And then I saw it, fly away. And the train was a terrible ride. There was no air conditioning. The windows were open, and you would pull a blanket over you to sleep. I was on the train 3 or 4 days, and when you woke up in the morning, you were covered with sand. And
wow,
the sand just kind of covered you.
Sort of
on the train. It was through the desert.
Fall of '44.
Fall of '44. It must have been.
And was that where you were finally based, in Karachi?
I was in Karachi for till VE Day.
May of 45.
Yeah, but in that time I was able to travel around India. I went to a lot of different places.
Was that when you saw Mount Everest?
Saw Mount Everest from there.
What was that story? Tell that story.
Well,
did you have to get up before dawn?
Well, I went on a furlough to Kashmir, which is a lovely part of the country, beautiful part of the country.
Now in dispute between India and Pakistan.
Right. But at that time it was owned by India, and they would let you take a furlough. And but then I was getting overseas pay and sergeant pay. I was making about, I think, just under $100, about $95 a month. And out of that I bought a bond a month, which I sent home, $1875 bond. And everything was provided for me: shelter, clothing, food, and I would buy candy bars or pop, which was like a nickel a candy bar, nickel a pop. I didn't smoke. I didn't buy cigarettes, and that was about all you could spend money on. There really wasn't a lot. So I had a little money. So I went on a furlough, took a train up to Kashmir, stayed in a hotel with a couple of buddies, and then we heard about this trip to Mount Everest. And we got up in the dark. We walked someplace, I'm not sure where, and we got on donkeys. And a guide in the dark took us up a mountain. And we didn't realize we were going until we came back. We saw where we were above the clouds. The clouds were down below us.
Wow.
Well, in Kashmir, we were actually above the clouds
already
a little bit.
Pretty high, yeah.
We were already pretty high, and then we went up higher.
Did you have yaks?
No, they weren't yaks. No, I remember donkeys. I think. I'm pretty sure they were donkeys. I don't remember. I didn't take any pictures of them.
Now, what were you... Oh, sorry.
Well, I went to a little plateau called Tiger Hill. And that's a plateau, and there's a little building there. It was very, very cold. But this time, even though it was summer, I think it was summer, it was because you're so high. I don't know how high it was. It was hard to breathe. Probably 10 to 12,000 feet above sea level. And Denver is only 5,000. So we were up pretty high. I'm not sure the altitude.
Could have been even higher. Really.
It might have been. I don't know what the altitude. There was probably a sign there that told us the altitude, but I don't remember.
And those mountains are Everest is 29,000.
29,000.
You could have been at 15,000.
And the idea is you go up there in the dark, and when the sun comes up and there's no clouds, you can see Mount Everest. Then I had a still camera and a video camera, and I do have movies of it, and I do have a few still pictures that I took.
Really?
And we waited there, and by then it was kind of like dawn. Sun was coming up. I do remember being very cold, and I bumped into a guy while we were just kind of going like this, with a blanket around me. Bumped into a guy, and he says, "Watch where you're going, Mac." And I said, "Where are you from?" He said, "Detroit." And it was a priest. It was a priest who was in the army. He was a father in the army, but he was also on this trip, but from another base. I didn't know who he was, but he was from Detroit. So we kind of put our arm around each other. I have a picture of him. Matter of fact, I think he wore his priest's. I think the picture that I recall, he had a gown that you could see below a heavy jacket.
Okay.
Yeah, and we watched Everest, and it was gone in maybe 10 minutes.
Wow.
But that's Mount Everest. I mean, like as
Yeah.
far as you could see.
Now,
You know,
at that point, it had not been climbed, right?
No, no, that was before Hillary.
Yeah.
Oh no, had not
Hillary
been.
was
No one had ever
51.
climbed it. I think people had attempted it
It
and
tried
died.
and died. Yeah.
And died.
Yeah.
Yeah, nobody had ever climbed it. Yeah.
And what were you doing there in India? CBI referred to China, Burma, India.
Well, in Karachi, we had a training base for fighter pilots.
Flying the hump.
Well, no. They were training fighter planes. That was Calcutta. In Karachi, there were fighter planes that were training to finish. They finished their tour d'Europe in Europe, and they were going to go to Japan to fight.
Ah.
So they were going to go to China, or somewhere, some island maybe, and fight Japan. So they went, instead of, if they didn't have enough hours, and that's how you went home, by either your days of service or pilots by hours, flying missions. If they didn't have enough, if they had enough hours, they went home. If they didn't, they went to India for training. I'm sure some went other places. And we had a camera called a GASP, a gun sight aiming point camera, and that was installed in the wing of the airplane and synchronized the machine gun. So in training, when they would fire the machine gun, it would actually fire a camera, and they could see if they got a kill, if they would hit, the targets. And that's how they trained, by learning how to through these cameras. So we developed the film at the base, and I was in charge of developing. We had big machine. It was movie film, and there was an automatic machine. There wasn't a lot to do, but you had to do the chemistry. And after the war, my friend Sid Siegel bought one of those machines because he had a movie business, and he bought one of those machines. It was called the K1A, if I remember right. But anyway, we had guys that were mechanics that would install these airplanes in the wing of the fighter plane. We had P-40s, and I think, what was the other one? P-58, I think. So that was the main purpose. But in the meantime, I was like a PR photographer, and I would photograph villages, I'd photograph hospitals. Some guys got medals, I would photograph them getting medals. So I was kind of a PR photographer too.
Were the gun sight aiming point devices, were they used with bombardiers as well?
Not to my knowledge. No, these are strictly fighter planes.
Okay.
One pilot in a fighter plane.
Okay.
So he would fire the machine gun, and the movie camera would work as long as the machine guns were being fired. Now, in actual combat, every seventh bullet was illuminated. It was called a tracer bullet. So you could actually see it on film. Otherwise, bullets went too fast. You couldn't see it. All you could see would be the kill or the miss.
Right.
But you could see the tracer bullets. They glowed some way. I don't know how they did that.
Do you have any of those films? Did you keep any of those films?
No. That was all
Army property.
Yeah, and I don't know if the film was recycled or they were in little cartridges, and they were used for training. I was not involved in that phase of it except the developing.
Is that all you did during the war
Karachi
period, or just the Karachi period?
Well, that was the war period. When the war ended, they closed that base and they sent me to Calcutta.
Was that
where
a
they had
supply depot you were working at?
That was a supply depot, and that was a giant place. And we had about 100 Indians working there, and I think there was a captain, a lieutenant, a warrant officer, and a master sergeant. And I went there as a sergeant. I was there about a week, and they all went home. They all had enough points to go home, and I'm in charge. I had no idea. I'm not a clerk. I knew nothing about buying film or storing film, and I had a mountain of this stuff. And it was coming in from all the various small bases all over India and China, wherever they were closing. They would bring the stuff to this base. So I had like 100 Indians, and we would stack it up. And eventually what we did with it was we loaded it on barges, which were taken to the Indian Ocean and sunk. They didn't want to send it home. And by that time I knew that in the States people didn't have film, they didn't have photographic paper, and we had tons of it they didn't want to sell it. I tried to get them to sell it. I said, sell it to India and make some money on it. Why you? But that that was beyond me. I mean, I'm a sergeant.
They were selling the raw supplies, not the finished. In other words, not the finished films from these from the fighters.
Unexposed film. The developed film, I don't know what happened to that. That was, somebody else had that.
Mm-hmm.
No, what I had were supplies of photographic paper, photographic chemicals, and photographic film that were packaged, sealed packages. And I had mountains of it, stacked up like you couldn't believe.
So it was actually a supply depot.
It was a supply
in reverse.
Yeah,
It
right.
was
It was a
getting
supply depot going out. When the
Yeah.
war ended, they sent everything back. They should have just destroyed it on the base, but they didn't. They brought it in here, and I had to inventory it. And I had guys that would count the boxes, you know.
Yeah.
And it was sort of like a make work.
Yeah. Right.
It wasn't necessary,
When
but
did you meet your friend Merwin?
oh yeah. Well, Merwin was in Karachi with me. Yeah, and he was older than me. He went in. Oh, I should have told you about Merwin. Yeah, Merwin was my best buddy. He had the bunk next to me, and
Merwin
Merwin Kirk. He lived in
from Buffalo.
From Buffalo. And when he came out, he came home and photographed my family and sent me a picture. But he was older than me by a couple of years, so he had been in earlier and he had points to go home.
Mm.
So he left from Karachi. But we did everything together, and we were, and we had a barracks with, I think there were 10 guys, 5 bunks and 5 bunks. And I was pretty friendly with all of them. There's another guy, Jack Beanstalk. Remember we went to see him in New York, and he was a photographer.
That was really his name?
Jack Beanstalk, yeah. It was spelled, I think.
B-I-E-N.
Yeah, yeah. And he was also a little older. And
So these were guys that you met over there in India.
in Karachi, and we were all in this little photo lab,
Well,
and everybody had a different duty.
when did you meet Miles and bump into Mike Seltzer?
Okay, that was Calcutta. Yeah, I was invited to a Seder, and I'm walking to the Seder in downtown Calcutta. It's Jewish families had posted, they called the base and said any Jewish soldiers want to come for Passover dinner for a Seder, they can come to our house. So they're Indian Jews. So I'm walking down this street and I bump right into a guy. I smack him. We went around a corner and we hit. He wants to fight. He's going to fight me. He's mad. See, so he takes off his shirt and he's wearing a Pi Tau Sigma t-shirt. I said, "Who are you? That's my fraternity." He's also older than me. Matter of fact, he dated your mother,
Yeah,
believe it or
I
not.
dated Miles.
Yeah, it's a real small world. Now, he was older, so he was ahead of me, but he was in Calcutta. I think he was, I don't know what he was, a radio guy, or George Crandall was over there too. George Crandall was a radio guy. He was also a fraternity brother. But anyway, I said, "That's my fraternity." "Well, that's my fraternity." So we get the secret handshake, and we go to the Seder together. And then we didn't see each other
This
after
is
that.
Miles.
Miles Meyerson, yeah.
Is Pi Tau Sigma the same as Sigma Alpha Mu?
It became, during the war, they were absorbed. It was just a one-chapter local Wayne University fraternity.
So, so you knew Pi Tau Sigma, the guy had to be from Detroit.
Oh yeah, it was, yeah.
But what about Mike Seltzer?
Okay, then it was also Calcutta.
This is when you're working at this supply depot.
Yeah, right. No, I got.
Get sick.
I'm trying to think. It was Karachi. No, I got these boils on my neck, and they wouldn't heal. And I was sent to the hospital. And 2 beds away is Mike Zeltzer, who I didn't know. But we got to talking. See, nothing would heal in India. That was one of the problems with the humidity there. They give you, all it had was penicillin. There was no antibiotics, but there was penicillin. But it didn't heal anything. This thing drained and drained and drained, and they wouldn't let me go. I was like in the hospital a month. They wouldn't let me go back until it would stop draining.
This is in Karachi or Calcutta?
No, I think it was Calcutta. I think. I forget.
Yeah.
But anyway, I met this Mike Zeltzer, and he's also from Detroit. But Mike is a couple years older than I am also. So we met in the hospital, and then we didn't see each other again until years later. Shalom Aleichem. He says, don't I know you from the hospital?
Really?
Yeah.
What was he doing over there? Do you remember?
I don't know.
But your father had those boils lanced, and then when he came home, he had these deep scars in the back of his neck, and he told me it was shrapnel that he had gotten.
That's a better story than a boil.
Great
And I
story.
believed him.
Listen, you know what I like to do is I like to actually go through your scrapbook, and maybe you can give me a little tour of the scrapbook, and we'll get that on tape. Should we do that in the kitchen?
Can we take a break?
Yeah, take a break and let's do that.
I'm tired.
We haven't got much time.